Welcome to the Semi-Retired Podcast with your hosts, Richard Bonomo.
And me, Dave Farrant.
So Dave, how was your week? Anything exciting?
Yeah, I did some home improvement, Richard.
Really?
Yeah,
Home improvement?
yeah. You may recall a few weeks ago that there was a problem with the flush handle on my toilet.
Breaking news.
So I splurged this time on a beautiful nickel-plated flush handle, longer than typical, so there's kind of more leverage there. So, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, it's improved my life like I never would have imagined.
So you didn't go for the Trump collection, the gold handle?
Oh, the Trump collection. Oh, that's interesting. No, there's a gift idea for next year. No, I went for the nickel-plated. It's kind of understated, sleek, and I tell you, it's made such a difference. It's a real pick-me-up.
I'll have to check it out next time I go. So in my case, my week has been, two terrible things happened recently for me. One not as terrible as the other, and that would be I caught COVID. But not too bad. It was like a cold, whatever. The weird thing is I tested positive for 8 days straight.
Wow.
Well, two days apart, but 8 days, which I thought was a little long. And, it's starting to piss me off at the end. But the most terrible thing, Dave, that happened in the last couple of weeks is I had to wear pants. The weather has gotten cooler here, and I had to cover my legs because shorts just don't cut it when it's 3 degrees outside.
Yeah, so for those of you, those listeners who aren't from Canada, you get a sense of what it's like here in Montreal in the summer. A lot of guys walking around without pants.
It's part of our look. The man bun and no pants.
Yeah. So, for when you're thinking of vacation plans for next year, make sure we're on your list.
It's less to pack.
Yeah.
You don't have to wear. You don't have to bring
pants.
pants.
That's a great point. Less to pack. Yeah.
Come to Canada. No pants required. Yeah.
Well, I like that.
So another interesting tidbit is since we had our UFO episode, I've had a couple of people approach me and tell me that they also had encounters with the lights in the sky.
No kidding.
Yeah. Kind of fascinating as this comes out of the woodwork and you realize it's not just something you hear about. People may have had these experiences. Yeah.
Canadians, Americans.
Both in Canada.
Canada.
Yeah, exactly. One in Newfoundland and one I believe it was in Quebec before she went to Vancouver.
And they both saw some lights.
Yeah, they saw lights in the sky, a series of 3 or 4 lights hovering in the sky for a long time. Yeah,
I'd love to see something that I feel I couldn't explain. It hasn't happened yet. Plenty of time left, but I'd love to.
We can arrange it maybe. I'll stand outside your window with some flashlights.
Yeah, you can try that. Yeah.
I won't get arrested for that. So, Dave, today we're talking movies off the beaten track, overlooked but not forgotten. These are movies that, in most cases, may have been possibly like bigger name in the past, but may have been forgotten, or some were very kind of indie type things or off most people's radar, I think, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And when I looked at your list, you're a little more indie than I am because I consider myself reasonably well-versed in movies, and I think 7 or 8 of your 10, because we've got 10 each, I'd never heard of. Like, literally, it wasn't like I said, oh yeah, that, like, I was completely blank on that. I had to go look them up. So, I mean, I can't wait to hear your analysis of these pieces of work.
Yeah, so, my list tends to be a little darker, let's say.
A little
darker theme. It reminds me of the self-portrait competition I entered one time, and I was having a terribly rough week, and one of my portraits is a long shot down a hallway, and there's a body on the ground, and it's me. And it was called "All Work and No Play Makes Jack a Dead Boy."
I think I remember that.
Yeah, it finished 60th out of 66 images. No one quite appreciated my commentary on overwork.
Well, you know what? A for effort, I think.
I think so.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start it off, Dave. We're going to throw to you your first pick.
So my first is a movie that was made from a book by an author, a science fiction author I really enjoy called John Wyndham. And he wrote books such as The Day of the Triffids, The Chrysalids, which I studied in high school, and the book from which this movie is made. The book is called The Midwich Cuckoos. The cuckoo, the bird, is that they lay their eggs in other birds' nests.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I hadn't caught that. Okay, yeah.
And so when it came time to make the movie, in 1960, when Wolf Rilla, the director, got the rights to this book, they changed the title to The Village of the Damned, which is obviously a lot more resonant. I understand why. But Midwich Cuckoos, I thought, was a cleverer title.
Yeah, and there's a series now on Showcase.
Oh, they've done a series of it. Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
So we're way back in 1960. It's a black and white movie, science fiction. The stars are, you'd recognize George Sanders. I can't think off the top of my head another movie that I've seen him in, but when you see him, you'd say, yeah, I know who that. I think he might have been in A Shot in the Dark, or one of the Peter Sellers movies back in the day. I think.
No relation to Colonel.
No relation to Colonel. Exactly.
Oh, the cuckoos, birds, chickens.
It's all it's all
coming
together. At any rate, this is a story of a sleepy English village called Midwich, of course. And one day something very unusual happens in this sleepy English village. Everybody falls asleep for 24 hours. And it is soon discovered by the local authorities that if you drive, as people try to get into Midwich to find out what's going on, when they hit a certain point in the road, they themselves fall asleep. And it's determined that there's a perimeter around Midwich into which people cannot enter, and for this period of time. So alarm, the military gets involved. At any rate, 24 hours later, suddenly the perimeter, what they call the whatever, is lifted, and people can go back into Midwich to see what's happened to the residents. Everybody's waking up, no apparent ill effects. What was that? They call it the timeout. Anyways, the movie progresses, and we find out a couple months later, suddenly, that all the young women in the village are simultaneously pregnant. And this, of course, causes an enormous amount of alarm in this,
Well, especially, I imagine, in those days to the single women, right?
Yes.
All the single ladies.
That's right. Especially, not just the married women, good point, but the single ladies. So anybody who is of the appropriate age is pregnant. And this sends the town into a bit of a frenzy. What's going on? Time progresses. And when the babies are born, it's discovered that they're a little bit unusual. And this is where the story starts to get into the heart of itself. And again, think of the cuckoo that plants its egg in another bird's nest. Slowly, the residents of Midwich come to realize that these children who are all growing up together look a little strange in subtle ways. They have
similar too.
And similar. They're similar. They have kind of slightly broader foreheads. They all have very pale blonde, almost whitish hair. Their fingernails have a different shape. I love the details they put in there. Fingernails have a different shape. And it gradually becomes apparent that they also have an ability to focus their mental powers together. They can kind of make things happen. At any rate.
And they have a bit of a hive mind, too. They can communicate,
hive mind,
right?
That's a very good term. It's like a hive mind. They can communicate together. And the one person in the village who kind of realizes what's going on is the George Sanders character. And
the professor.
He's a professor, of course, an English professor living with his much younger wife in this manor house in Midwich. And he starts to suss out that something alien has gone on here.
Well, possibly. It's one of the explanations that's given, right?
Yes, fair.
He has to meet the home secretary, as they call him. It's not secretary, it's the home secretary.
Yes.
And there's the military there, and they're trying to come up with what the hell happened here.
Yeah.
And one of the possibly alien in nature. So they never fully agree to it, but it's thrown out there.
Yeah, that's what I like about this movie. There's nothing overt. Nothing overt goes on.
Yeah.
It's very understated. It's not a long movie. It's maybe 90 minutes, I think. Very quiet. There's no super duper special effects. It's really just all about this dawning sense of horror. I get that there's something has gone on, and what could it be? So what happened? The children progress in age throughout the course of the movie. I think they wind up being maybe 9 or 10 years old, and they're starting to learn how to use their powers, how to focus their minds, as Richard mentioned, in a hive mind way. And the professor sets himself out to take them on. He becomes their number one adversary. Oh, yeah. And I don't want to give away the ending or anything, but it becomes a battle of wits and will between the professor and the alien hive mind children, leading towards this, somewhat explosive climax.
And I saw the movie. I thought it was you recommended it. I saw it's a beautiful black and white. It's really well done. And one of my favorite scenes. It's not giving anything away. It's right early on, where the one of the military guys is driving towards the town because he'd called someone, and the phone just hung up, and he doesn't know what's going on, and he runs into the mailman, or I think it's the mailman who's on a bicycle, and the mailman goes, "Oh, I was on my way there," and he goes ahead, and the mailman goes on his bicycle, and he just falls over, and the military guy just stops, looks at it, calls in the army.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like he doesn't go to see if the guy's doing okay.
Yeah.
It's like almost like he knew, do not cross this line. I was like, how do you jump from a guy falling on his face? You don't go help him, but you call the army in because something's
15
weird.
years after the war, so maybe they were still fairly, fairly rapid response, situation there in the UK. So it's a neat movie from that perspective. If you like science fiction, you'll love it. If you like just a mysterious story, you'll love it. And I read the book. I read The Midwich Cuckoos back in high school days, I think. And this is quite a faithful adaptation. So, Yeah, you can find it. I believe it's available on one of the streaming services. Just if you got an Apple TV, or whatever
Device,
media device you've got, just search for it, and hopefully it turns up for you.
And interestingly, there's a 1995 remake from John Carpenter, which I haven't seen.
Oh, and I like John Carpenter.
Yeah, that could be fun. Yeah,
because I like John Carpenter.
Yeah.
The Thing. Oh, yeah.
I almost put that on the list.
Yeah.
I almost did. I said it would be too easy for me to put that on
Well,
the
I think
list.
we both went back and forth on our 10, right?
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
thing.
we did,
Yeah,
yeah.
I did,
Yeah.
It's settled. So, Richard, you're first.
So my first movie is The Lighthouse from 2019, a Robert Eggers movie. Starring Robert Patterson, who you might know as
Some sort of vampire?
Yeah. Yes, he was the vampire.
Patterson, the guy with the kid with the hair.
Yeah, he was in Twilight, yes.
That's it, Twilight. Yeah.
He's also in the Harry Potter movies. He plays Cedric, who ends up getting killed by Voldemort. My son! They killed my son!
God.
Yeah,
Yeah, my daughters were big fans of Patterson at the time, yeah.
He's a very good actor. He tried to he's done stuff to distance himself from Twilight. Also starring Willem Dafoe.
Oh, I like Willem Dafoe, yeah.
And Valeria Karaman, who's unknown to me.
Yeah.
She has a very small role in the movie. So the description is... Two lighthouse keepers try to maintain their sanity while living on a remote and mysterious New England island in the 1890s.
Ooh, I like that.
So this is loosely based on a story from maybe the 1800s, 1700s about an island where a couple of lighthouse keepers would go. It's very remote. And this monster storm went on. They would do like a 6-week stint. You'd do 6 weeks. And then you'd get off, 2 guys would replace you and so on and so on. You kept a logbook. And a monster storm brewed for 3 months and they were trapped on the island for 3 months.
Wow, imagine.
And they slowly lost their minds. Now, I'm not sure if the original story is English or if it's Norwegian or is it from Scandinavia. There's been a few adaptations of this type of stuff. You mentioned one the other day.
Yeah, I saw one and I thought it was this movie, but it's not.
No, that's the one with the treasure. It's kind of different.
Right.
The movie starts off, they show up on the island, they've got their stint to do, and Willem Dafoe plays the crusty old guy, and Robert Patterson is the new guy. It's his first stint there.
Okay, he's the rookie.
He's the rookie, exactly. And Willem Dafoe speaks with a funny accent, and the whole movie is black and white.
I love a black and white movie. I love a black and white.
In a super low ISO movie film that they had to use gigantic lights to light them because it's like ISO 15 or something crazy like that.
Now, for non-photographers, that means a very insensitive film to light, right?
Exactly. So when you look at it, it looks slightly dark, or on some points it looks like daylight. Because most of the movie takes place indoors.
Okay.
But they have these gigantic lights beating on them to light the area enough, and it's shot in a weird format. Also, it's not 16:9 widescreen like we used to. It's closer to square. Beautifully shot, absolutely beautiful cinematography in it. And he said, you watch the movie and you watch the slow descent into madness of the two guys as they're trapped on this island waiting to get rescued, and the interaction between two characters the entire movie.
Just the two.
Just the two of them talking back and forth, and the slow descent, and Willem Dafoe with his, he won't let anybody go touch the light upstairs, in the lighthouse. Only he can do it. And he gives all the shitty jobs to Patterson to go, like literally shitty jobs. And there's a whole thing about the birds, the gulls. Never kill a gull. If you kill a gull, it brings bad luck. Foreshadowing something that happens later. And a slow descent of them into complete madness. It's really incredible acting on both parts.
I'd love to see it.
Oh, yeah.
The director Eggers, I think it is. Is there any? Do you know of anything else he's done? I don't know this guy.
He did The Witch.
Oh, he did The Witch.
Which is also
we're getting
on my
to
list.
that. Yeah.
He's also He's done a bunch of stuff. He's a great director. It's an A24 film, so the movie studio that does a lot of interesting movies.
Yeah, lighthearted list of movies you can tell here, listeners.
Yeah, especially my second one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, great movie. If you want to watch something that is beautifully shot and relies really on the acting of two actors really nailing it perfectly. Yeah.
Fantastic. No, I'm going to watch it. I know it's available somewhere on one of the streaming services for rent, so I will watch it. I think it sounds amazing. Yeah.
I saw it in the theater. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Where did it play here in Montreal?
Yeah, it played here. We watched it at the Kirkland Coliseum.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so it was a first-run movie.
Yeah.
I thought. Well, I assume this was more of an off-the-beaten-path art house type film.
Oh,
but no.
yeah. I don't think it did particularly well.
Right.
Because it's kind of an obscure thing. But my son really wanted to see it. He had mentioned it to us. We had seen the trailer, and I saw the trailer like, oh, I got to see this.
God,
You know, anything with Defoe.
Yeah, I think he's gold, that guy?
Yeah. So, Dave, your second pick?
Okay, my second pick from 1964 is a movie called Zulu. The director is Cy Enfield, and I can't tell you anything else he's done, but it's notable from an actor's perspective because it's Michael Caine's first movie, or one of his first movies, certainly his first major role. He's paired up with an actor called Stanley Baker, less well known, and these guys are soldiers in Victoria's army at the zenith of empire, 1879 South Africa. So think red coats, white pith helmets, rifles and bayonets. And it's called Zulu, so, you know, we're going to have a battle against the Zulu nation that was very prominent in South Africa at that time. And what makes this movie fantastic is it's not about the good British soldiers fighting the bad Zulu warriors. It really does a fantastic job of showing you the Zulu culture. For instance, in one of the opening scenes of the movie, there's and the Zulu did this apparently at the time, there's a mass marriage ceremony where a bunch of young men are getting simultaneously married to a bunch of young women. And they show you this in very realistic fashion, almost documentary fashion. So you get a sense of what the Zulu culture is like. And this persists throughout the movie, where you wind up at the end of it with a real sense that you feel very sympathetic towards the Zulu. It's their land, by the way, and the English are they're colonists. At the same time, you sense the predicament the soldiers are in. Young guys serving the queen, it was Victoria, at the southern tip of empire, stuck in a losing situation as they try to defend a little post called Rorke's Drift. And this is called the Battle of Isandlwana. Why is this important? Because an entire English, I wish I could remember now, the entire English military formation was mostly lost. And this just didn't happen to the Redcoats in the 19th century. They were used to winning. And they were overcome by waves and waves of Zulu warriors. It's a widescreen film. Think Dr. Zhivago, slightly enhanced color. I don't know which of the color processes it was, but those kind of slightly oversaturated color processes were popular in movies back then. Beautifully photographed. The South African landscapes are gorgeous to look at. Terrific use of silence in this movie. I mean, there's a soundtrack, but oftentimes it's just quiet and you see these vistas in which the scene is set. And, if I'll fault it for one thing, it's that this is inevitable for movies from 1964, is the combat sequences are not as believable as we've become accustomed to. All that changed for me when I saw Saving Private Ryan, because as soon as which I saw twice the same weekend, I couldn't believe what I just looked at. Yeah. After that, I could never really look at earlier movies from a combat realism perspective. I know it's not World War II, but still, that intensity's not there. But they do a great job. There's a battle of will between Michael Caine and Stanley Baker. Stanley Baker's, they're the two officers of the contingent of soldiers posted to Rorke's Drift to resist the Zulus. And they're both upper crusty, kind of slightly snobby Englishmen. And they've got this battle of will going on. You meet some of the frontline soldiers and get a sense of the interaction, the relationships there. And then when the Zulus attack, they used hundreds and hundreds of extras. I believe they actually conscripted young men from the South African army to act as the Zulu warriors in the movie. And you get a sense of the Zulus' military, you get a close look at the Zulus' military tactics. A lot of it was psychological, using sound to freak out the English soldiers. Again, I think it was 8,000 Zulu attacked this outpost, which is being defended by 250 redcoats, who of course have rifles, and the Zulus mostly don't. I think they had a few. It's a wonderful look at that slice of history, not done in a cheesy jingoistic way, but done in a way that, you really get a sense of what the Zulu culture was, as I've said, and what it meant to be down there on the southern edge of empire trying to defend yourself. It's fantastic.
I've heard of the movie. I've never seen it, but I imagine it's one of the early attempts at an anti-colonialism bent, right? It's like, it's not the glory of the British Empire here.
No,
we're
it's
actually
not.
showing that we may be destroying a culture here.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, you don't come away. Again, you're not like, bad Zulus, good redcoats. It's subtler than that.
And it's funny when you mention, like using sound, and like you can just imagine this kind of thing where, you look at some of those older war scenes, like the British, and they would have this very organized battles, right? You'd have these regiments all lined up, and then they'd say, well, this is what we're going to do. We're all going to march. The two armies would march, in line towards each other. Like, you're at war. What the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah.
You know, it's like organized death.
We look at Waterloo, I mean, 1815 Napoleon against...
Which was just a bit before this, right?
Like 60 years earlier.
Yeah.
And the military formations are squares.
Yeah.
They formed into squares with their weapons facing outward. You kind of get that because, like defensive positions. But to your point, they're all moving in this very geometric kind of way.
Yeah.
So that's the way things were done back then. Also, the loud uniforms. I mean, this was towards the end. Like, what was the point of wearing a bright red uniform? I mean, you're making yourself a target. Now, that ended in the First World War.
Especially with all the medals and stuff, right?
Medals.
And once they could shoot long distance, they're like, just go for the guy with the medals.
Yeah.
Forget the guys in the front. And this it would have seemed a little weird to the British also, who are used to this very ordered battle, to have these guys just coming down screaming. And it would have probably would have terrified them, I imagine.
Oh, it did.
And sent them into disarray.
Well, at one point, they're all pounding on their shields, and it's just got this weird, dull, rhythmic sound. Yeah. And they can hear them coming because there's 8,000 guys running. And even when they're out of visual range, they can feel the ground shaking. And then the Zulus use song a lot. They do this chanting, either to increase their own morale, to freak out the British, who knows. But it's all in this, again, in this beautiful landscape, and it makes the movie extremely atmospheric. I couldn't recommend it more.
So when this came on TV, my wife was younger, and my father-in-law wanted to tape it. Right back then, you'd put a tape in the VCR,
That's right.
You'd press record, and obviously didn't program the time. So my wife's father was getting sleepy, and he's like, okay, just stay up. When the movie ends, press stop. So my wife said she had to sit through the entire movie waiting for it to end so she could press stop, and she had like no interest in the movie. And then the next day had to watch it again with her dad when he was awake this time. So she goes, I saw the movie twice.
Well, that's a devoted daughter for you.
Yeah.
Mine wouldn't do it, if you're listening out there, would you?
But they're not listening.
No, they're not.
Here you go.
So,
Okay.
Richard, over to you. You're number 2.
So for me, an upbeat movie.
Nice.
No.
Oh, okay. You're kidding.
Okay, so my second pick is The Virgin Suicides from 1999.
That sounds light and fluffy.
Oh, yeah, light and fluffy. Sofia Coppola's first it's her directorial debut.
She's Francis Ford's daughter, is she?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I didn't know
Francis
that.
Ford,
okay.
Yeah. She's in The Godfather, right? She's in the Godfather. I forget it's in The Godfather 1 when Michael has that scene towards the end where he's getting baptized and all family business will be the little girl that's being that's Sofia Coppola.
No kidding.
She's also in Godfather 3, and everybody she gets like terrible reviews for that role. It's not that bad. So this is her directorial debut. It's got Kirsten Dunst, Josh Hartnett, James Woods, and Kathleen Turner.
That's a great cast.
It's a good cast. The rest of the cast is, up and coming actors. AJ Cook is in there. She goes on to do a few other things. So it's set in the 1970s, and it's told in a voiceover from the boys in the neighborhood. And they talk about this family of sisters, the Lisbon sisters. So a series of 5 sisters who live in their neighborhood, and the boys are all obsessed. 5 kids. They're all pretty blonde girls, ranging in age from, I forget what the youngest is, to about 14, 15. And they live with their parents, James Woods, who's he's a school teacher. I forget what subject he teaches, whatever. He's a school teacher, and Kathleen Turner is there. And they're Kathleen Turner, very, very repressed family, like very religious, but, like uptight a little bit. So the father is kind of like, goes along, and the mother says something, he never really talks back or
Where's
whatever.
Where's this set? Is it set? It's in the U.S., is it?
Yeah, it's set in the U.S. I forget which it's Detroit in the 70s.
Detroit in the 70s.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That gives me a real flavor. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Detroit in the 70s. And it's odd because in the movie, at one point, there's a scene where they're cutting down all the trees because the trees are all diseased. And it's something we see now with the ash borers now. All our ash trees are being cut down. So there's a scene in there that takes place with the trees. So essentially, it's the story of the 5 sisters, the boys who are obsessed with the girls, ranging in age. And it's you start off, one of the younger daughter kills herself by jumping out the window and landing on the fence.
The youngest of the 5. Okay.
The youngest, kills herself. And it causes this whole ripple through the family. The parents don't understand what's happened. The father gets really fucked up, starts missing work. And although the subject matter is heavy and it's how the kids react and the parents really, repress and really rein things in and don't want them to see the boys. And at one point, the parent, a little pushback, and they have a little party and stuff. And the boys are really obsessed trying to figure out what's going on with the girls. And it's this whole story of, we saw her at the school and this happened. And I don't want to give too much away. And throughout the movie, you have the soundtrack from this French band called Air. And it's this really atmospheric movie that plays throughout the whole background, really tying you in and giving you a sense of melancholy throughout the movie. And it's really well done. You have, sometimes there'll be an interview with one of the characters a little later on when he's older and he's thinking back about what happened in there. And things happen throughout the movie. I can't say too much or I'll give it away, but it's a great movie. It's very atmospheric. Yeah, the subject matter is a bit touchy and triggering, and it's never fully explained as to exactly why anything happens, but read between the lines. The parents are really repressed, and when you squeeze something a little too tight, something's bound to give, right?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So let's just say it doesn't end well, but I loved it. When it came out on, I think I had the satellite at the time. I forgot. I watched it 6 times the first weekend. I just kept watching it over and over and over again. I just love the soundtrack. I just love the whole feel of it. Yeah, I know it sounds like it's going to be a depressing movie, but give it a go. Great performances by everybody. James Woods in there. You just want to slap him and say, fuck, wake up already.
I always want to slap James Woods whenever he's in a movie.
Especially now, eh? With his political views today. But you just want him to wake up. You just want him to wake up and see what the fuck is going on with his kids and with his wife and the whole family thing. And he's just, I don't want to say he's oblivious. I think he just doesn't want to deal with it. And just, he just never actually gets around to doing anything.
So it's a real character study type movie.
Yeah. Really, really well done.
When I saw your list, I was really intrigued by the synopsis. And I think this is one of the ones I couldn't find when I searched for it. I don't even think it was available for rent or buy at the moment. So I don't know where it is. I will, again, I want to catch up to it because I think it sounds fantastic.
It's beautifully shot. And as a lot of movies with a narration sometimes feel a little cheesy, but this one gives you insight. And at one point I think they find a diary. And throughout their lives, you see them later on. And throughout their lives, they're always wondering what happened, why did this happen? And it's like a mystery that haunts them for the rest of their lives, which really, I like the feeling that it's kind of, you can kind of guess as to what happened, but you'll never really know the reasoning.
Oh, see, I like a movie that leaves questions at the end. I don't need full resolution myself.
Absolutely not. No resolution.
No, I think, once you get past the age of 12, I think...
Well, while we're on that subject, Shawshank to me is ruined. The Shawshank Redemption was, considered one of the greatest movies.
So it is, yes.
So it is. Except, everybody's seen the movie, so I can spoil it. But at the end, the guy goes in, he's going to go meet his friend. He's received a letter he gets on the bus, right? And you're like, he's going to meet, I forget what his name is.
Yeah.
The movie should have ended there. Instead, no, he has to see him on the beach. We don't need to see him on the beach. I don't need to see that. He doesn't even know. He says, I'm in Florida or California or whatever.
To dredge it up, and I got it now. That's right. Why did we have to see it?
Why did we have to see that? That was just the one drop too much to me.
I agree.
My wife and son argue with me saying, no, you needed that. I'm like, no, you didn't need it.
Well, how does Silence of the Lambs end, right? We just saw Hannibal Lecter in his cream-colored tropical suit walking behind the asylum director, right?
Yeah.
Did we need to see the inevitable meal that was to come? No. We just needed that.
Exactly. Yeah,
trim it off, baby.
Trim it off. Yeah. Less is more.
Yes. Less is more.
So Dave, what's your third movie?
Okay. So from 1965 now, the movie is called The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. It's important that we think of 1965 because this was at the height of the James Bond craze. There had already been Dr. No, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, and Thunderball. So James Bond was everywhere, as was Get Smart, the Maxwell Smart series. So spies were everywhere. And they were either,
both very realistic.
Both very realistic. Exactly. Either like sexy Playboy spies like James Bond or goofy nerd spies like Maxwell Smart.
With the foot fetish.
You had a foot fetish?
Well, he talked into his shoe. Remember?
So
the shoe phone.
Right, the shoe phone. Yeah, oh my God. That's right, the shoe phone. Hey, there's something to look up. At the other end of that spectrum is The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, starring an amazing Richard Burton, who, if I'm not mistaken, is like 38 years old in this movie as a man, as the actor, but Richard Burton to me always looked to be some 55. Like, I feel I'll never look as old as Richard Burton. I don't know what it is. It's black and white again, where you see that coming through in a lot of our movies. It's a beautifully shot movie again, and it is the antithesis of the other two that I mentioned in the sense that, and it's a John le Carre novel adaptation, by the way, I should say, John le Carre of Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy fame and others. And what it does is it shows you espionage work as seedy and drab and depressing and, empty of any kind of excitement. Richard Burton plays this so well. He just spends a lot of time in the movie just walking around in like sort of a trench coat with the collar up. And you just feel this deep sense of nothingness in this man. He actually strikes up a bit of a romantic relationship in the movie with Claire Bloom. She's a woman he meets, I think, in a library. She's at a bookstore. They have dinner together. And you can see he's so emotionally repressed. In fact, one of the most famous scenes of the movie later on, he's telling her, like, the kind of thing I do. He goes, it's not exciting or glamorous. We're just seedy little men with like dirty little secrets like me. It's like he's repulsed by himself, At any rate, I won't go into the plot because in typical John le Carré fashion, it's very labyrinthine, twists and turns, but it involves his name is Alec Lemus, being recruited to try and turn an East German spy. The action shifts from London to Berlin, East Berlin, West Berlin. It's beautifully sinuous as a movie and leaves you with this sense of just how awful that work really is. Just trying to, out people and turn them and use people to get to other people. It's not a lighthearted piece of entertainment. Yeah. Do we have any of those? We must, eh?
Lighthearted? Not on my list.
No, maybe. Well, I might have one. Okay. So that Spoil came in from the cold. Terrific.
It's funny. I was listening to a podcast on the weekend, and they were doing a book review, and they had to pick like a book that they read that they really loved. And this was one of the books that was picked. Was this one? And by the way, he was 40 years old.
40 years old, which is a young man.
Yeah, he's a young man, exactly. Younger than us.
Yeah, quite a bit younger.
And they picked and he mentioned that I think le Carré was still working for MI5 when he wrote the book. And
I don't think I knew he worked for MI5.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, yeah, he did. And so apparently, his first three. This I think is his fourth. His first three are not that good.
Right.
And finally, when he broke this is the book that allowed him to leave MI5. I'm not sure if I've seen the movie. I'm looking through the stills here, and I've seen a Richard Burton movie recently that is of that era, and I'm not sure if it's this one. I might be mixing it up with something else. But yeah, this has been on my list for a long time too. Yeah.
Look it up. It's again, it's a great, and it's so mid-60s looking too. So it's got that great slice of time look and feel to it.
And very, very British feeling too. Right?
Very British, yes. Very British.
A lot of mustaches.
So Richard?
Okay, so my third movie, if we're talking very British, is called Entertaining Mr. Sloan.
Oh, that sounds English, yeah.
From 1970, from director Douglas Hickox, starring people I don't know, although the first name sounds familiar, Beryl Reid, Harry Andrews, and Peter McCurney. It is a 3-person movie.
And those aren't English sounding at all, by the way, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I'll just read the IMDb description. Sloan, a handsome, sexy, and completely amoral young man, joins Kath's household as lodger and proceeds to manipulate her and her brother Ed.
Tasty.
Yeah. So this is based on a play. Okay. So it was a play that did really, really well. And so they decided to adapt it into a movie. I've seen this movie exactly one time. Okay. It would have been, I'm guessing, early 90s on CBC, which was, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation here. It used to play a black and white movie every Friday. I think it was at 11 o'clock, 10 or 11 o'clock. The news would come on at 10, and then at 11, there would be a movie.
That sounds right.
And so me, my brother, and my friend Patrick, hi, Patrick, hope you're listening. This thing came on, and we just sat there and watched it with her. It's just a quirky British movie about this guy, Sloan, Mr. Sloan. And it's got a catchy little song, Entertaining Mr. Sloan, that plays throughout the movie. And he's like this hustler guy who shows up at the place. And the other couple, Kath and Ed, they're like an older couple living, brother and sister living, sharing this house. And this guy shows up and kind of wheedles his way into there and ends up sleeping with both of them.
Oh my God.
I'll leave it at that. And
see, the English would call such a person a cad. That's not a word we use here. He's a cad, right?
He would have been, I guess he would have been considered a bit of a hustler. And you get this whole feeling throughout the movie that he's going to take advantage of them and take them for everything they've got. And they give you a nice little twist right at the end.
Did you say it's black and white?
Yeah. Yes, I believe it's black and white.
You did as well. Okay.
Yeah. Entertaining movie. It's a fun British movie, and it's just one of those. It's just when you think it's going one way, it goes somewhere else. And we thought we just loved it. It's just hilarious. It was a fun romp, and it's a period piece. It's England 1960, right? 1970. Sorry, 1970.
1970. Sure.
A fun little movie. A really fun little movie. If ever you can find it, and you look for something quirky or whatever, pop it on. It's not very long. It might be just over an hour. A fun little movie.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds fantastic.
Yeah. And Dave, yours.
Okay, over to me now. Back to the science fiction theme. From 1972 now, Silent Running, made by Douglas Trumbull, who had been one of the guys who did the special effects on 2001: A Space Odyssey 4 years earlier. And in fact, it was on the strength of his special effects work in that movie that he was given the chance to make Silent Running for a very limited budget, because he had never directed before, but they were like, okay, he's got some chops here. So what's interesting about Silent Running is that it's very much a movie of its time in that it's a movie about environmental consciousness, but in space. Now, I remember back in the early 70s, even in school, we were doing posters about pollution, and Earth Day started, and there was the Whole Earth catalog. So it was really very much a topic. So in the Silent Running world, you meet our main character, played by Bruce Dern, on this giant spaceship called the Valley Forge. And they have left Earth with samples of plants in these giant kind of biodomes they've got on their spaceship. And they've left Earth and they're heading off into space. And the idea is the main character's job is to preserve the fauna that he's got. He's got some flora as well under his care. He is, plays it a bit too over the top, I would say. He's like so obviously environmentally conscious, and it's a bit heavy-handed sometimes, okay, so put that aside. And his two shipmates couldn't care less. And so they go off on this voyage. One of the other notable features of the movie is that he has three small robots, or they have three small robots serving them that they call, I think it's Huey, Louie, and Dewey from the Donald Duck's. Yeah, the Duck. And it turns out that these little mini robots inspired Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, to create R2-D2.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 3 years later. And I can recall seeing this movie. I think my dad took us when it was in the theater. So I'm like 11 years old. And these little robots are they do this little waddle that looks really human. And I found out recently that why that was. This is brilliance on the part of Douglas Trumbull. He hired legless actors to sit
legless
actors, exactly. So people who act and just don't have legs, accident or whatever, and sat them inside these little robots, and so they could sort of do this movement that didn't look mechanical. So they're a big part of the movie. Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Is I got that right? Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Huey, Dewey, and Louie. At any rate, so it has a very early 70s look to it. Lots of white plastic and kind of slightly bright colors. I'm not doing it full justice in the sense I'm suggesting it's aged a little bit. Well, it has aged a little bit.
It's of its time.
Yeah. But it's still a worthwhile watch if you can get past those factors. And there's an idealism to it that's kind of sweet. And I'm not going to give away the ending, but Bruce Dern winds up, he's taken his mission to heart. He's going to save this little remaining slice of Earth's flora and fauna at any price, and see where that takes you.
Yeah, interesting concept. When you think the 70s was a big movement environmentally, right? You said you had Earth Day. The EPA is finally
very good
that's
point.
right?
Yeah, EPA.
The one good thing Nixon did.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. A lot of back to the Earth movement. I think the Whole Earth catalog would have come out back then, where people doing a lot of homesteading happening, and so it would have been the perfect time to do this kind of movie. Yeah,
kind of like a post hippie kind of thing. I mean, hippiedom was really, but it was over, but it was still just in the rearview mirror. So
Yeah, and then was it in the late 70s or the 80s where they did that whole spaceship Earth thing where these people were living in a dome? They were supposed to live there for 2 years. And it was supposed to be, I gotta look this up. That would be an episode right there. Yeah, I forget if it's somewhere, is it Colorado? Whatever. They built a dome and it was supposed to be self-sufficient, and they were supposed to live there for 2 years. They closed it off, it was a big media thing, and the whole thing went terrible.
Oh, yeah, that's ringing a faint bell.
Yeah.
Didn't work out.
No, as you can imagine.
So that's my quick look at Silent Running. Richard, over to you.
Okay, so for my pick, it's going to be The Witch from 2015, another Robert Eggers movie. Right, so we had The Lighthouse, and this is his movie from 2015 with Anya Taylor-Joy, who you may know as the main character in The Queen's Gambit.
Oh, maybe that's why I recognize you. You've got a very distinctive face.
Yeah, very distinctive face. This is before she became famous.
Okay.
Ralph Ineson and Kate Dickey. So
I should say I've seen this one since Richard showed me his list, so I'll say a few things on the way through.
So, I mean, it's called The Witch, a New England folktale. Okay, that's what it says. And the description is very simple. A family in the 1630s New England is torn apart by the forces of witchcraft, black magic, and possession. So think of the Crucible or any of the movies of that time. You know, the big witch scares in the 1600s,
the Salem witch trials.
Salem witch trials, those kind of. So what Eggers did is he collected all the folklore, if you want, related to witchcraft and possession that existed in New England in those days. So he took all the things, you know, like a goat is the devil and a black goat represents the devil, all those kind of superstitions they had, and he crafted a movie out of all the folklore. And so you have the scene of this little family who live on a simple farm and their life in obviously 1630s New England, very hard life with the animals. And it's just a beautiful movie with stuff starts to happen.
And they have left their village, right?
Yeah.
Because over some religious conflict between the
That's
father
right.
and the local authorities. So they've basically gone off on their own.
Yeah, exactly. They want him to conform to some sort of religious doctrine or whatever, and he doesn't agree with it. So they go off on their own farm and they're isolated. The mother is kind of not thrilled with the whole idea, and things start happening. Things start happening out of the blue, which are you know, over time get attributed as to possible witchcraft and possession. And I mean, it's hard to describe the movie without giving too much away.
Yeah.
But you saw it recently. I mean, it's very atmospheric.
Oh my God.
Really feel like you're there. You feel the isolation.
Yeah.
When the incidents do happen, they're done in, and it's not done in a super gory, over the top, we'll hang entrails on the walls kind of thing. But you really get to feel it, and you can imagine the people of those days were taking those as signs that something wasn't quite normal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's very well said. That's it. You can again, if you suspend your own sense of disbelief, as you just said, you really can see how people's minds would turn in an isolated situation like that.
Yeah.
Once they've been preloaded with all these religious beliefs.
Oh, exactly. And that would have been the high point of that time, right? I mean, anything that did not follow their Bible would have been considered devil, the devil or spirits coming to do. I mean, think of the early sun worship, right? The sun comes up, like you have no idea where the hell this ball of light comes from, right? So you got to worship it. It's always there. It's there. It gives you heat. It gives you crops, whatever. And you know, you have the inverse of that when something bad happens, an animal dies or a family member dies in a mysterious way. It's attributed to the devil or to forces of evil.
Yeah, I think it's just, people can't stand randomness, and if a baby randomly dies, they have to assign an explanation to it, and I think that's the basis of a lot of religion.
Absolutely. And the movie takes you through a lot of the stereotypes, and if you're you've read some of the stuff about witchcraft and the witch stuff, it's interesting to pick up on, say, oh, there it is, there's that little tidbit, oh, this is where this kind of thing would have come from, and they take the movie to an interesting conclusion, I think I can say. Dave?
Yeah, that's an understatement. Yeah. But I want to throw in a comment about the art direction in that. I mean, the palette of the movie it's drained of any kind of color. It's just all browns and grays and pale colors. Well, all of the actors' clothing looks like you believe that movie. Yeah. I think that's, if I suddenly could transport myself back in time to 1630, somewhere in the woods in Massachusetts, it would look like that. Yeah. I felt. Even the way they talk. I had to put on subtitles, frankly.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. I put on subtitles because I found I couldn't follow the archaic speech they were, or to my satisfaction. Yeah. So I put on the subtitles.
Yeah, he really goes all out when he does his movies. Same thing with The Lighthouse. They did a lot of study of the period dress and language and customs and stuff, and you really get that feeling in there. Yeah,
and I appreciate that when a director
It's a beautiful
does that.
movie. Yeah. Darkish theme, but I don't think it's particularly scary or anything. I mean, I'm not sure if you want to watch it with little kids or whatever. No. But beautiful movie anyway. So I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, tremendous. I was disappointed that I'd never even heard of it. This is one that, to me, it would have been on my top 10 had I seen it and you not seen it, because I think it was just amazing.
So speaking of entrails, what's your next one, Dave?
Let's see now. Okay, so this is called Theater of Blood from 1973. And what's notable about this movie is that the lead actor is Vincent Price. Now, I think we all remember, those of us of our vintage, particularly remember Vincent Price growing up. He was always appeared around Halloween. He had that particular voice and accent. He was always playing Draculas and characters at any rate. Scooby-Doo. And this movie actually is Vincent Price's favorite movie that he ever made. And it's almost like it was like sort of custom fit for him. In it, he plays an aging Shakespearean actor who, he's kind of a scenery chewing type guy who's always getting shit on by the, kind of upper crusty theater critics in London. And he decides he's going to off them using, by recreating various murders from the Shakespearean plays that he's been criticized for in his performances, to shove that down their throats, so to speak. So you get this, and it's a little bit overdrawn, a little bit campy, but it works in the sense that, he's a Shakespearean actor. There's that overstatement aspect to Shakespeare as well. So you realize that he's gone mad, basically as a result of being dissed all these years, overlooked, if you will, by the critics, and now he's going to have his revenge. And what you also think, and what you also realize at that point is how awfully violent Shakespeare was. I'm not going to remember now, but in one of Shakespeare's plays, maybe it was Troilus and Cressida, not like I've ever read that sort of thing, somebody gets fed their dogs through a funnel that's shoved into their mouth.
Early gavage.
Early gavage, exactly. And so he recreates this, and it's awful. It's a little bit gory, but because it's 1973, it's not realistic in the sense we might get today. Diana Rigg is in it as well, and she's terrific. From The Avengers, of course.
Game of Thrones.
And Game of Thrones, that's right. She also said this was her favorite movie of all the movies she's done. So you've got two...
Really?
Yeah, you've got two, very well-known English actors there saying this is our number one piece of work. I couldn't find it anywhere. I wanted to watch it again. I think I rented it in early video store days, so I ordered a copy off Amazon that was delivered a few days ago, and I'm looking forward to watching it again. But it's a blast and very much of its time, and worth anybody's time to have a look at.
Yeah, I knew the title because when you mentioned Theater of Blood, I said, "Oh, isn't that Vincent Price?" And you said, "Yeah, I don't think I've seen it. I may have. I have no recollection of seeing it." Yeah, but it sounds like it's a great premise for a movie.
Yeah, it is actually.
Who else is going to play that? But Vincent
exactly.
Price,
that's it. Who else but Vincent Price could do that? I think that's a fair point. It's like because it's just all about overstatement.
Yeah,
and overacting and over everything.
Yeah.
And Richard, you're next.
Okay, so my next movie is called 9, the number 9 from 2009. It's a Shane Ecker directed movie with Elijah Wood, Jennifer Connelly, Crispin Glover, Christopher Plummer, Martin Landau, John C. Reilly.
Wow.
Tons of people are in here. It's an animated movie, and I'll read the description. A rag doll that awakens.
Go on.
In a post-apocalyptic future holds the key to humanity's salvation.
Isn't that fantastic? What a great
So
idea.
yeah, so I think humanity's been wiped out, and so this doll wakes up, and it's really it's just beautiful animation. This doll wakes up and has kind of lost its memory a little bit. It has to figure out where the hell it is, what's going on. Has just a vague memory of a creator or something or other, and is trying to find its way back. And as it basically wakes up like a kind of like in a scrapyard and has to find its way back to civilization, if you want, and comes across a cast of characters, other rag dolls, and they're all numbered. He's 9. I'll meet 6 and 5 and 3.
I love this
and
idea.
all this. Yeah, and they have their little numbers on them. And you don't quite get the significance of the numbers till later on in the movie. And so they go on a series of adventures and, more and more dangerous as they try to get back to the creator to see what happens, why they're there, what's going on, and how they can save humanity. But just beautifully done. And Shane Ackers, first movie he directs. He's a special effects coordinator before this. This is his first movie. But just beautifully done. I mean, it's kind of a kid's movie, but it's meant more for adults, like a lot of movies today, right? Has a more of an adult feel to it. But beautifully done, just beautifully done. The animation is fantastic.
Is it fair to ask you what the animation style is like? Is it childlike or kind of hyper realistic? A little bit like
It's a bit hyper. Yeah, it's a bit realistic. I believe it might be stop motion. I'm saying this now, but it's been a few years since I've seen it. And yeah, they're actually made of like, when we say ragdoll, it feels more like a potato sack almost. You know, that fabric. Remember the old potato sacks?
I know what you're saying.
Not the paper ones from today,
Right,
or the
right.
old onion bags kind of thing. And they have like, you know, like his body will have like a big zipper on the front, and inside there'll be stuffing.
Got it.
And he'll have like lenses for eyes kind of thing. And they have like, some of them can talk, some can't. And they have some, you know, are more adventurous than others. Some are scared, and he has to gather the troops for the one big push at the end for their fight. And it's just beautiful, very, very atmospheric.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Dark, very dark, you know, palettes of brown and green, not very colorful. None of the dolls are like, don't look for Raggedy Ann and Andy here. They're made of almost leftovers, if you want. But beautifully done. It's a great movie to watch. Great acting. I mean, Crispin Glover's. I love Crispin Glover. He was he was McFly. He was the father, not the bully, but he was the father.
Right, the father.
Yeah.
When I saw the synopsis, I couldn't wait to hear you talk about it, because I read it. I was like, oh my God, that sounds fascinating.
And there's a whole thing where he has to find the spark of humanity at the end. That's what they go for. But it's a great movie. Really, really fun. I think you can watch it with kids. There's nothing terrible, because obviously they're rag dolls, so you're not going to see any intestines or crazy things. All right, Dave. So that's halfway through. We've done 5 each. We've done 10. So
Time flies when you're having fun.
It does. Next week, where we'll review the remaining 10.
Excellent. Really enjoyed that, Richard. Looking forward to next week already.